Chapter 4683. Call me daddy. Call me daddy. The parrot straightened its neck and hooted a few more times. Gu Jinglian's face darkened even more. Chu Ho held back his laughter, not knowing what to say. In the beginning, Gu Jinglian taught the parrot to speak with the intention of teaching it to call him daddy. Therefore, he guided it patiently and said, "Call me daddy, call me daddy." In the end, the parrot copied his words verbatim. It rarely opened its mouth. Only when Gu Jinglian was in a bad mood did it cry out happily. Gu Qingze and Bai Sheng came down hand in hand. When the parrot heard footsteps, it turned its head and saw Bai Sheng walking over with Gu Qingze. It jumped over, wagged its tail, and whistled. "Hoo, beauty, beauty." This parrot actually knew how to flirt. Gu Jinglian was drinking tea. When he heard that the parrot was flirting with his daughter-in-law, he was so shocked that he almost spat out his tea. Bai Sheng did not notice the parrot at first. She only heard someone whistle at her and seemed to be calling her a beauty. However, she did not know where this call came from. Seeing that Bai Sheng was ignoring it, the parrot clicked its tongue a few more times. Gu Qingze also heard the sound of this lousy parrot. He turned his head and saw the parrot standing on the pole in the birdcage. Its neck was twisting back and forth as if it was annoyed that Gu Qingze's body was blocking Bai Sheng. Bai Sheng followed Gu Qingze's gaze and looked at the parrot. Only then did she realize that its head was bobbing rhythmically in the birdcage. She was surprised for a moment and asked Gu Qingze, "Can this parrot talk?" "Yes, my dad often teaches it." "Oh." Bai Sheng could not help but be curious. She walked in front of the birdcage and reached out her hand. The snow-white little guy in the birdcage also stared at her curiously. It suddenly spread its wings and the feathers on its head relaxed. Then it made a sound like "Tising-fiskidisk." "Beauty, kiss me, kiss me." Bai Sheng was amused by this parrot. She glanced at Gu Qingze in confusion. How did it learn? In her impression, Gu Jinglian was a particularly cold and elegant man. She couldn't imagine that he was a man who would teach a parrot to say these words. "My father didn't teach me that." "Then who is it?" Bai Sheng was even more curious. Gu Qingze pointed at himself. "I didn't teach her on purpose. My mother said the bird was female. I couldn't remember what it was called, so I called it Beauty. Although it had learned how to call a beauty from me, it had never stared at a girl and called her a beauty before. Could it be that this stupid bird can also recognize that you are a great beauty?" Chu Ho smiled and complained, "I'm still considered a beauty, right? But I've never seen it chase after me and call me a beauty." Gu Jinglian suddenly said, "Maybe it's not interested in old people anymore." Bang! In front of Bai Sheng, Chu Ho mercilessly threw a punch. Gu Qingze covered his face in embarrassment. Bai Sheng was dumbfounded. Gu Jinglian seemed to be used to it. He covered his shoulder and remained silent. "Well," Gu Qingze lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "My mother is a little violent, but it's not serious. Moreover, it's targeted." Targeted? Chapter 4684. "Yeah, usually. She only targets me and my dad." When Bai Yu heard this, she laughed. "You're already so old. Would your mom still hit you?" Gu Qingze glanced at Chu He meaningfully and said with a smile, "Now that he's married, I don't think he'll do it again." "Oh." When Chu Ho heard this, he immediately said, "I've already talked to Qingze. As long as he's married, I definitely won't lay a finger on him." Ha! Bai Yu could no longer maintain her ladylike image and laughed out loud. Even Gu Jinglian, who was staring calmly from the side, looked over curiously. He also did not expect that the quiet and sweet Bai Yu would let out such a bold laugh. When she sensed that Gu Jinglian was looking in her direction, Bai Yu was so scared that her mouth was still open. Her laughter stopped abruptly and she quickly hid her expression. She immediately stood properly like an obedient student. Chu Ho was dumbfounded. It was said that since ancient times, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were the most incompatible. Why was Bai Yu afraid of Gu Jinglian more than she was of her? Chu Ho turned to glare at Gu Jinglian and warned, "If you continue to glare at your daughter-in-law so fiercely, she might run away." Gu Jinglian looked defeated and wronged. He raised his hand and touched his face. He muttered, "Am I fierce?" Gu Qingze said, "You look fierce." Gu Jinglian was speechless. Chu Ho said, "Bai Yu, stay tonight." Bai Yu looked at Gu Qingze. He was also looking at her. He silently squeezed her hand and said, "Stay, okay? My mom is happier to see you than she is to see me." Bai Yu was extremely touched. What did she do to deserve this? They had clearly been separated for so many years, but the boy in her heart still remembered her. Moreover, she did not have to face those difficult mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems in the future. It was not because the Gu family was well off, but because she had a reasonable, gentle, and considerate mother-in-law. Everyone in the Gu family seemed to be getting along well. As she walked in, she occasionally bumped into a few servants, and they were all smiling. Gu Qingze greeted them naturally, without any sense of hierarchy between master and servant. What touched her the most was that her mother-in-law was really good to her. "Alright, stay." Bai Hao gladly agreed. At night, Gu Linga and Gu Xinghan also came back. Gu Jinglian finally showed a rare smile. Even when he faced Bai Hao, he didn't show such a gentle smile. He couldn't be blamed for being biased. He doted on his youngest daughter so much that Chu Ho was jealous of her later on. The relationship between father and daughter was better than anyone else's. Gu Linga had just turned 18 when Gu Jinglian gave her a villa by the sea. To everyone in the Gu family, the assets of their father's generation did not belong to them. Gu Jinglian would do an asset notarization every year to consolidate his assets. In the eyes of outsiders, he was a little heartless when it came to educating his children. If they wanted a villa or a luxury car, they could fight for it themselves. Therefore, Gu Qingze knew how to earn his own living after graduating from school. Moreover, he did not rely on the Gu family for anything. Gu Linshi was the same. Although he worked for the Gu Corporation after graduation, the Gu Corporation did not belong to any of them. Only Gu Linga. Whatever he wanted, he had it all. Chapter 4685. Gu Jinglian did not deny the fact that he was a slave to his daughter. In his own words, he was only happy for 2 days when he had a son, the day he was born and the day he got married. When he had a daughter, he was happy from birth until the day he got married. When the father handed his daughter over to another man, he was no longer happy. He felt that he had to set an example for his future son-in-law. In the future, his son-in-law would dote on his daughter the way he doted on his wife. Gu Linga's nickname was Xianxia. The moment she returned, the servant came to inform them. In the end, Gu Jinglian stood up excitedly and walked towards the door. He could not wait a moment longer. Chu Ho's lips twitched for a while. He looked at Bai Yu and said helplessly, "Your father is like this. He dotes on Xianxian the most. When he sees Xianxian return, he looks like he has lost his soul." She seemed to feel a little guilty. She felt that Gu Jinglian did not treat her as well as his biological daughter. After all, it was her first time visiting the Gu family. "Your father." This title made Bai Yu daze for a few seconds. For a moment, she could not get used to it. When Bai Yu heard this, she heard the apology in Chu Ho's words. She smiled and said, "A daughter is a father's little jacket. If I have a daughter in the future, I'm worried that she will fight with me for favor." Gu Qingze could not help but joke. "I used to joke that a daughter was a father's lover in his previous life. I didn't believe it in the past, but I think I have to believe it now." Gu Linga returned with Gu Xinghan. The two of them bickered all the way through the door. When they saw Gu Jinglian, Gu Linga walked over and threw herself into his arms. She hugged his shoulders and tiptoed to kiss Gu Jinglian's cheek. She smiled and wrapped her arms around his arm. "Father, why are you back so late?" Gu Jinglian's tone was obviously reproachful. Gu Linga turned around and glanced at Gu Xinghan. "He just got his driver's license and insisted on using my car to practice. In the end, he was so nervous the whole way that he drove 60 kilometers per hour the whole way back." When Gu Xinghan heard this, he was speechless. "It's my first time driving and it's in such a congested place. To be able to drive 60 kilometers per hour is already first-rate, okay?" When Gu Jinglian saw him yelling at his precious daughter, he glared at him and threatened, "If you dare to bully your sister again, I'll hit you." Gu Xinghan shrunk his neck and immediately felt aggrieved. "What do you mean I bullied my sister? I'm telling the truth." "Can't you drive faster?" Gu Jinglian continued to lecture him. Since you know there's a traffic jam on the road, why are you still driving your sister's car? Gu Xinghan felt even more aggrieved. Dad, you're biased. It was fine if he bought a Maserati for Gu Linga, but when it was his turn, he did not even get a single strand of hair. Gu Jinglian said that if he wanted to drive, he had to earn money to drive. There were so many luxury cars parked in the Gu residence, but Gu Xinghan was the only one that didn't have one. Although he was young, he was the same age as Gu Linga. Gu Jinglian gave Gu Linga a Maserati, but when he wanted to buy a Mercedes-Benz, Gu Jinglian ignored him. Sob, sob, sob. If only he was a girl too. Gu Xinghan pretended to cry and said, Dad, it's not good for you to always dote on my sister. You have to share your love equally. Gu Jinglian glared at him. Get lost. Gu Xinghan immediately gave in. Okay. He followed behind Gu Jinglian dejectedly. Chapter 4686. Even Gu Linga felt sorry for him. She said to Gu Jinglian, Dad, don't yell at him. He's quite pitiful. Gu Xinghan also sniffled as if he had been wronged, looking very disappointed. Gu Jinglian saw this but did not do anything. He let Gu Linga walk away with her arm in his. Just as Gu Xinghan was sulking, Gu Linxi's voice came from behind. Xinghan. Gu Xinghan turned around and saw Gu Linxi. He felt wronged and walked over. Big brother. Gu Linxi could not help but laugh when he saw his resentful look. What's wrong? Did Xianxia bully you again? She didn't bully me. Dad bullied me. Although Gu Xinghan and Gu Linga grew up together, they were twins after all. Most of the time, they were closer than anyone else. This was something that Gu Jinglian could not compare to. No matter how much Gu Linga bullied him, he could not bear to say anything bad about his sister when others asked. Big brother, why are you back so early today? I heard that your second sister-in-law was coming home today, so I got off work early. Second sister-in-law? Gu Xinghan was really confused. My second sister-in-law? Since when do I have a second sister-in-law? There was a very strange thing about the younger generation of the Gu family. Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian had 3 children in total. One was Gu Qingzi, one was Gu Xinghan, and one was Gu Linga. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter. However, Gu Qingzi, who was supposed to be the eldest, was the second child. When Gu Qingzi was 6 years old, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho adopted a boy named Lin Shi. After the adoption, Lin Shi took on the surname Gu. Because he was older than Gu Qingzi, he was the only one that came to mind when the eldest son of the Gu family was mentioned. Gu Jinglian treated him very well, and Chu Ho treated him like his own. After so many years, Gu Linxi completely regarded himself as part of the Gu family. The Gu family was his real home. Because he was the eldest, he had the demeanor of a big brother. Therefore, after Gu Qingzi got married, Bai Ran became his second sister-in-law. Gu Xinghan's interest was piqued. Second sister-in-law, when did this happen? How could I not know? You'll have to ask your second brother. He's been married for so long, and I only found out about it recently. Gu Xinghan and Gu Linxi chatted as they walked into the main hall. At this moment, Gu Linga and Gu Jinglian were already sitting in the main hall. The little girl did not know her limits at all. She stared at Bai Ran the entire time as if she was looking at a new continent. Bai Yu was almost embarrassed by her stare. When Gu Qingzi saw this, he could not help but glare at Gu Linga. Why do you keep staring at him? It was only then that Gu Linga regained her senses, but her mouth was still full of sweetness. This is the first time I've seen such a beautiful lady. Bai Ran's face turned even redder. After all, it was his wife who was being praised. Moreover, although Gu Linga had a sweet tongue, she was very arrogant and never lied. At most, she would exaggerate a little, but she could get to the bottom of people's hearts. In her heart, she really thought that Bai Ran was very good-looking. That was why she kept staring at her. When Gu Xinghan saw Bai Ran, he pretended to be calm and walked over. However, he sat opposite Bai Ran. Although he was a little reserved, his actions showed that he cared about his second sister-in-law. Chapter 4687. Gu Qingzi said as he looked at Bai Ran. This is your second sister-in-law, Bai Ran. You can call her sister-in-law from now on. Bai Ran bowed politely to Gu Linxi and smiled. However, when her gaze landed on Gu Linxi, her eyelids twitched. This man, that day he appeared with Chu Ho. She was a little dazed and began to wonder about this man's identity. Gu Linshi saw Bai Ran's puzzled gaze and explained with a smile, "You must be curious about who I am. This is the second time we've met." "Yes, let me introduce myself. My surname is Gu and my name is Linshi. I'm Gu Qing's elder brother. You can call me elder brother like him." "Elder brother?" Bai Ran called out timidly. That was not how he introduced himself the other day. Gu Linshi explained, "I heard that Qingzi married a wife, but I've only heard her name and never seen her in person. Mom and I were curious, so we went over. We don't have any bad intentions. We just wanted to see who my future sister-in-law is to be able to make my brother, who has not been close to women for 20 years, open his eyes." Gu Qingzi was speechless. "Brother, all right, I won't joke with you anymore." Gu Xinghan reacted. "Mimi, it's my turn to introduce myself." Gu Xinghan walked in front of Gu Linshi. Although he was a little shy, he still introduced himself generously. "My name is Gu Xinghan. I'm the third child in the Gu family. I'm 18 years old and a freshman this year. Although I don't know when you got a new sister-in-law, if anyone bullies you in the future, just tell them my name." Gu Linga said sarcastically, "Come on, why would I tell them your name? Do you want to get beaten up twice?" Bai Ran burst out laughing and looked at Gu Qingzi curiously. "What do you mean by, get beaten up twice?" Gu Qingzi laughed and explained, "My brother doesn't have any other strengths, but he's very good at fighting." "Fighting?" "He's very good at fighting. He can probably fight an entire grade alone." Gu Qingzi was clearly complaining, but Gu Xinghan felt that it was a great compliment. He felt especially proud and puffed out his chest. Gu Qingzi continued, "That's why this kid has made a lot of enemies out there. However, they can't beat him and don't dare to touch him. But it's not the same for you. If you tell them his name, they might not want to hit you at first, but once they hear his name, you'll be in trouble." Bai Hao shivered inexplicably. How terrifying! Gu Xinghan was momentarily embarrassed. "Brother, why are you exposing me?" "The truth." Gu Linga looked at Gu Xinghan and immediately said, "Moreover, he often takes credit outside. If you mention his name, you might be chased by a group of people to collect debts." When Gu Xinghan saw that his underwear was about to be overturned, he anxiously tried to cover her mouth. Gu Linga could not dodge in time and half of her face was covered. "Ha!" Bai Hao couldn't help but laugh. Then he realized that he had lost his manners by laughing like that. He pursed his lips and blushed. "I couldn't help it. I'm sorry." Chapter 4688. Bai Ran was speechless. Firstly, she was shocked that Gu Linga had so much pocket money. Secondly, she was shocked that Gu Xinghan was so pitiful. Is it that exaggerated? Bai Ran gently tugged at Gu Qingzi's sleeve and said with some heartache, "Isn't the difference in treatment between your brother and sister a little too scary? Does your family still favor girls over boys?" Gu Qingzi pouted and said, "When I was young, my father was very violent to me. I originally thought that he was like this to everyone. In the end, when my sister was born, it was incredible. The moment he came home, he would quickly carry this little princess. My sister was basically raised by him since she was young. It was only when she was 10 years old that he was willing to let her walk on the ground when she went out." Bai Ran was shocked when she heard this. At the same time, she was a little envious. Actually, her biological father did not seem to particularly like daughters. Although he doted on her, he had always said that he wanted a son. Therefore, her mother had always worked very hard to give birth to a son for him. However, a car accident brought disaster to this family. Even her unborn brother hadn't had the chance to see this world. However, Bai Ran had no idea about this. However, growing up in her aunt's house, the love that her cousin received was something that she could not compare to. Therefore, she even thought that the whole world was probably like this, favoring boys over girls. Habit was a very scary thing. She seemed to have gotten used to the rules of survival in her aunt's house. Therefore, she naturally thought that the outside world also favored boys over girls. Therefore, Bai Ran was surprised and envious of Gu Linga, who had been doted on since she was young. Gu Qingze looked at her somewhat disappointed and somewhat fascinated eyes and could not help but feel a little heartache. He could tell that she must be very envious of Gu Linge. Gu Linge saw that Bai Ran was also staring at her, but there was a hint of envy in her eyes. She was confused and did not know what to do. "Why do you keep staring at my sister?" Gu Qingze patted Bai Ran's head. "Why, are you very envious?" "Of course." Bai Ran sniffed. The eagerness in her eyes could not be hidden even if she tried to hide it. "I lost my father when I was very young, so I miss him a little." Her memories of her father seemed to be getting more and more blurry. She tried hard to recall, but it was difficult to dig out any deep impressions. However, she had also imagined many times how she would have lived if her father was still around. Let's not talk about wealth and status, but she would definitely be very happy, right? Gu Qingze squeezed her palm gently like he was squeezing a cat's paw and said, "There's nothing to be envious of. My sister is envious of you. You're such a good brother, but now you've been taken away by another woman." When Gu Linge heard this, a look of disdain appeared on her face. "Hey, when did I say that? Good brother?" She snorted and walked to Gu Linxi's side. Holding his arm, she said, "I only acknowledge this good brother." "Biased," Gu Qingze said coldly, "you only know how to pester Lin Shi. At least Lin Shi has never bullied me." "Oh." Chapter 4689. Gu Linge blushed and said awkwardly, "You did it willingly. I didn't force you." When Gu Jinglian heard this, he glared at him, but this time he glared at Gu Qingze. "How about helping your sister with her homework? Do you have any complaints?" Gu Qingze suddenly stopped talking. Gu Jinglian had a lot of authority in the Gu family. Although he was usually more willing to listen to Chu Ho, he was absolutely domineering when it came to doting on Gu Linge. If Gu Qingze went against him, it would not end well for him. Biased. Gu Qingze pouted, feeling wronged. Gu Linge's gaze fell on Bai Ran. She smiled and walked to her side, holding her hand. "From now on, I'll call you sister-in-law." "Nice to meet you, sister-in-law." Gu Linge had a sweet tongue and was cute and obedient. Her soft greeting made Bai Ran feel flattered. At first, she was worried about the relationship between her sister-in-law and mother-in-law, or whether her relationship with her sister-in-law would not be smooth. She did not expect her sister-in-law to take the initiative to get close to her and give her a warm welcome. Gu Qingze moved closer to Bai Ran's ear and whispered, "If you build a good relationship with my sister, you'll have half of the Gu family." Bai Ran smiled knowingly and looked at Gu Linge. Gu Linge did not hear Gu Qingze's whisper and was a little confused. She asked, "Did you say something bad about me to sister-in-law?" Gu Qingze immediately raised his hand to clear his name. "I wouldn't dare to say anything bad about you. I'm innocent." His cowardice made everyone laugh uncontrollably. Gu Linxi shook his head helplessly. "All right, let's eat." Auntie Gue had already prepared dinner. As the head of the family, Gu Jinglian was waiting for him to get into character first. However, he still followed tradition and let Chu Ho sit first. Before Chu Ho sat down, he asked Bai Ran to sit beside him. Bai Ran was a little shy at first. Gu Linge held her hand and sat beside Chu Ho. Only then did the others take their seats. During dinner, Bai Ran was still a little reserved. After all, the Gu family gave her the impression that they had strict rules. She was worried that if she did not perform well, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho would not like her. However, in the past, the rules of the Gu residents were indeed extremely strict. Later, Chu Ho felt that this set of rules was too old, so he took the initiative to change it. Some of the complicated etiquette had been discarded. Gu Jinglian wasn't used to it at first, but he gradually got used to it. The family atmosphere had become more open-minded and free, and he had gotten used to it. "Don't be so formal. Your father may look rigid, but in fact, in this family, there aren't so many rules." Hearing this, Bai Yu relaxed a little. However, even though she was a little more at ease, she still kept an eye on Gu Jinglian's expression as she ate. Chu Ho followed her gaze and glanced at Gu Jinglian. He immediately elbowed him. Gu Jinglian almost lost his grip on a piece of pork rib. He turned to look at Chu Ho in confusion, only to see her winking at him. After being husband and wife for so many years, they had some chemistry and immediately understood her intentions. Gu Jinglian took the initiative to put food in Bai Ran's bowl. Bai Ran was even more flattered. Gu Jinglian said as he put food in her bowl, "Eat more." Gu Linga also said enthusiastically, "That's right. You're already part of our family, so there's no need to be so formal." Chapter 4690. When Bai Yu heard this, she was extremely touched. This meant that they welcomed her. At first, Bai Yu was a little worried about whether she would be able to integrate into such a huge family. Now, it seemed that her worries were unnecessary. Chu Ho suddenly thought of something. He looked at Gu Linshi and asked curiously, "Is she awake?" She didn't mention a name, but Gu Linshi knew who she was talking about. His expression immediately darkened. Gu Linshi sighed deeply and put down his chopsticks. Suddenly, he lost his appetite. When Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian saw him sigh, they knew that the situation didn't seem optimistic. Gu Jinglian also frowned. "Is she still not awake?" "The doctor can't say when she will wake up." Bai Yu saw that everyone's expressions suddenly became serious. For a moment, she was a little helpless. She leaned over to Gu Qing's ear and asked in a low voice, "Who are they talking about?" "A friend of ours." Gu Qingze explained. "Do you still remember the CEO of Xingyu?" "I remember, CEO Yun." She remembered very clearly. After all, back then, the employees in the sales office had bullied and looked down on her. That man had decisively punished them and protected her. "His sweetheart," Gu Qingze said. "That girl has been asleep for a long time. He doesn't know when she will wake up. He said that when she wakes up, he will marry her." When Bai Yu heard this, she couldn't help but be shocked. Why did she sleep for so long? She wouldn't take it for granted that it was a fairy tale about Sleeping Beauty. She could only think of one possibility for her to sleep for so long. That was vegetative state. Is she in a vegetative state? Gu Qingze shook his head and said, "I don't know why. That morning, she couldn't wake up no matter how hard we tried. Her vital signs were all normal, but she couldn't wake up. At that time, we were all scared out of our wits. We thought that her brain had suddenly gone into hibernation, but all her physical indicators were normal." "How could this be?" Bai Yu was a little surprised. "How could this be? What did the doctor say?" "Let's not talk about local doctors. Even doctors around the world don't have much experience in this field." "What's her situation?" Gu Qingze turned and looked at her deeply. He said quietly, "Multiple personality disorder." Multiple personality disorder. Before this, Bai Kun had rarely heard of this term. At most, he only knew about it from movies and novels. However, he had only heard of people in a vegetative state falling into a deep sleep. A vegetative state, apart from retaining some instinctive nerve reflexes and the ability to metabolize matter and energy, he had completely lost the ability to recognize his own existence. They would not actively move and would remain in a coma for an indefinite period of time. Apart from the brainstem, which was still functional, it could also digest and absorb nutrients when delivering nutrients to the body. It used this energy to maintain the body's metabolism, including breathing, heartbeat, blood pressure, and so on. In response to external stimuli, it could also produce some instinctive reflexes, such as coughing, sneezing, yawning, etc. However, the body no longer had consciousness, perception, thought, and other high-level neural activities unique to humans. Chapter 4691. Director Yun, we're here. Yun Tianyu alighted from the car. The chauffeur rolled down the window and asked respectfully, "When will we pick you up?" "I won't be going back tonight. I'll stay here." "Okay. Call me anytime if there's anything." "There's no need. Rest early tonight." "Okay." The chauffeur nodded and drove off. When Yun Tianyu arrived at the ward, the curtains were drawn and the lights were on. Two nurses were busy wiping her body with hot water beside her. He walked over, and the nurses immediately greeted him with a smile when they saw him. "Hello, Director Yun. Director Yun, please sit for a while. It'll be done soon." He reached out his hand and said, "Let me do it." "Director Yun, let me do it. Where did you scratch?" The two nurses looked at each other and did not insist. They passed the warm towel to him. "There's still your hands and face left. Okay. You two can go back first." The two nurses left quietly. Yun Tianyu walked through the curtains and saw Natalia lying quietly on the hospital bed. Her face was pale and gaunt. Her body relied on nutrient fluids to maintain its vital signs all year round, so her skin was sickly pale. Even though she was unconscious, the frailness on her face could not be concealed. His heart ached a little. He scrubbed the towel again, walked to the bed and sat down. He gently held her hand, rolled up her sleeves, and carefully wiped her arm. Every day when she was in a coma, he would come. Sometimes he would visit her in the morning. Other times, after he was done with work, he would visit her or spend the night with her. He seemed to be waiting for a miracle to happen at every moment. The electrocardiogram was still beating methodically. As he wiped her arm, he stopped to look at her from time to time. After wiping her arm, he took out a cotton swab and carefully cleaned her fingernails. Her fingernails were all cut by him. Even though so many years had passed, the gaps between her nails were still clean, without a trace of dirt hidden in them. Other than her face looking especially pale from not eating for a long time, he took good care of the rest. At a glance, one would think that she was just asleep. "You've been asleep for a long time," Yun Tianyu muttered to himself. When there was no one around, he liked to talk to her like this. Even though she might not be able to hear it. But even talking to herself like this gave him a feeling that she was about to wake up. Yun Tianyu was a little depressed. "Gu Qingze is already married. How much longer do you want me to wait?" The person on the bed still didn't make a sound and wouldn't answer him. Yun Tianyu's lips curled into a smile as he gently caressed her face. "How strange. You've always been there, but—" As he spoke, he paused for a moment and suddenly picked up her hand. He lovingly placed her soft but cold palm on his face. Her hands were extremely cold. He held it gently and kissed her fingertips. No one could say for sure when Natalia would wake up from her illness. The doctor had put forward the most optimistic and the most pessimistic ideas. The most optimistic thing was that she might wake up anytime, anywhere, even if it was just a blink of an eye. However, the pessimistic thing was, she might never wake up again. Chapter 4692. Sleep forever, until the organs fail and finally truly die. Even so, he would not give up. Even if she were to sleep forever, he would wait for her. Until she woke up. Outside the door, Yun Xianxia carried the fresh flowers. Just as she reached the door, she saw someone standing by the bed through the glass window. She could not see who was standing by the bed as the moonlight shone through the window. Yun Xianxia could guess who it was, though. She lowered her head to look at the fresh flowers in her arms and sighed softly before putting them aside. Natalia loved fresh flowers the most. The flowers in the ward were always fresh. Yun Xianxia stood at the door and watched for a while. Her heart ached when she saw him holding her hand and quietly looking at the silhouette of the person on the bed. Natalia had been in a coma for nearly 5 years. No one knew when she would wake up. Without any warning. All of a sudden, she could not be woken up. After she was sent to the hospital, they invited experts in the field of multiple personality disorder from all over the world, but no one could determine what was wrong with her. Her condition was different from other parts of her body. If her bones were broken, the problem could be seen through an X-ray. If there was something wrong with her body, the MRI scan could help the doctor understand. However, she had fallen into a deep sleep without any warning. After a series of tests, no abnormalities were found. Everyone was puzzled. No one knew when Natalia would wake up. She knew that a certain someone had been foolishly waiting for her to wake up. She placed the flowers on a stool at the side and left quietly. He definitely did not want to be disturbed at this time. Actually, Yun Tianyu was the most relaxed whenever he was with Natalia. He liked being with her. Even if she was sleeping and he did not know when she would wake up, he felt that the whole world seemed to be quiet when he was with her. He did not know when it started, but he had gone from missing her voice to enjoying this tranquility. He suddenly reached out and bent his index finger to scratch her nose bridge lovingly and helplessly. "Little fool, if you don't wake up, I'll be old soon." Natalia closed her eyes but did not speak. Her lips were tightly pressed together. He looked at her quiet face and couldn't help but fall into a trance. For some reason, he felt that she hadn't changed much even after all these years. It was as if she looked exactly the same as when she fell asleep. Her facial features didn't change at all. The doctor said that although she was in a coma, her body's functions and metabolism were proceeding in an orderly manner. She was no different from an ordinary healthy person. However, his facial features didn't seem to have changed. Could it be that a person's appearance wouldn't age so easily if they were to continue sleeping? Yun Tianyou's heart ached as he caressed her cheek. Her breathing was clearly steady, but why was her cheek so cold? He lowered his head and gently kissed her cheek, then kissed her forehead. His kiss traveled from her forehead to the bridge of her nose, all the way down until it landed on her lips. This kiss was out of control. Yun Tianyou kissed her deeply on the lips, but she did not reciprocate. Chapter 4693. He had imagined the scene of the two of them kissing countless times, but he did not expect it to be under such circumstances. His nose tingled all of a sudden. "I miss you." His fingertips caressed her face, reluctant to part with her. "I miss you, do you hear me?" Yun Tianyou sat up straight and put his hand into his pocket, where he found a box. He took it out. It was a diamond ring box. Natalia liked Tiffany & Company's diamond rings the most. She had once said that if that man were to propose to her in the future, she must buy a diamond ring with a ring holder. The diamond should not be too big. It would be best if it was a more ordinary style, a pink diamond, flat and tidy. She would never take it off once she wore it on her finger. "I want to wear it for life." He would always remember this sentence. Yun Tianyou opened the box. Inside, a pink diamond ring was quietly placed. The ring was a very simple design. It was so simple that no matter what brand of jewelry it was, it would find such a design too simple, so it was not withdrawn from the market. He had specially hired a famous designer to customize it. He had bought the ring for a few years and kept it in the box. Hence, the diamond still retained its radiant luster. He waited. When she woke up, he would propose to her at once. She had slept for a long time, and he did not want to delay it any longer. Hence, he always wore this ring with him. When she woke up, the first thing he would say to her would be, "Marry me." However, after waiting for so long, she still did not wake up. He held the ring in his hand. Under the moonlight, the pink diamond emitted a dazzling light. It was dazzling. Yun Xianxia returned home. In the living room, Mu Yazhe was playing video games with Yueyao. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, Yueyao had grown into a slender and elegant woman. Her looks were needless to say. Be it Mu Yazhe or Yun Xianxia's genes, she was a beauty. Her height, however, had grown crazily in recent years. It had far exceeded Yun Xianxia's expectations. Originally, Yun Xianxia thought that with Mu Yazhe being 1.88 meters tall, it would be good if Yueyao could grow to 1.65 meters. She did not expect her to grow all the way to 1.72 meters and still have signs of puberty. If she continued growing, she could be considered a playboy. When she returned home, the two of them were playing video games in front of the TV. Yueyao had recently bought a new game disc. It was called Resident Evil. It was a horror game for 2 players. She did not dare to play it alone, but she wanted to clear the game, so she pestered Mu Yazhe to accompany her. In the end, this game was too scary. Even someone as strong as Mu Yazhe was so scared that he had nightmares for several nights. When he was young, this guy was high-spirited. However, he did not know if it was because of his age that he was afraid of such horror games. Although he was afraid, he could not admit defeat in front of his daughter. Even though he had a psychological barrier and had nightmares for several days, he still acted as steady as a mountain in front of Yueyao. Play quickly. Mu Yazhe's forehead was full of cold sweat, but his hands were moving swiftly. The buttons on the controller were clicking loudly. Chapter 4694. Dead. I'm about to be bitten to death. It's coming. In the Vanity Fair, a certain man who had always been calm in the face of change showed a hint of panic. On the TV screen, a little loli controlled by Mu Yazhe immediately rushed to Yueyao's side. Then she used a crowbar to beat up the zombie. On the other hand, Yueyao's burly shout was hugging a machine gun and shivering in the corner. Yun Xianxia would occasionally watch the father and daughter play this game. In her impression, the character controlled by Yueyao was very powerful. His hands were nimble, and his character was set up as a soldier. He was also the only one in the game who could use a gun. On the other hand, the little lowly controlled by Mu Yaja was a support character. Her weapon at most was a crowbar. Back then, when the characters were assigned, Yueyao claimed to have researched many strategies and said that she would lead Mu Yaja to clear the game. In the end, Yueyao, who had the most powerful character in the game, actually relied on Mu Yaja's protection. Yun Shirshir was dumbfounded. She reached out and pushed Yueyao's shoulder. She said resentfully, "Don't you have a gun in your hand? Hit it. Bah. Kill it. Kill it." Mu Yaja said quietly, "Replenish health. Replenish health." In this game, there were a total of 2 characters playing together. One of them replenished health, while the other also enjoyed the effects of replenishing health. Yueyao hurriedly opened her bag and was about to look for a tool to replenish health. However, the zombie suddenly pounced on her. She was so shocked that she dropped the controller. As the character on the screen was bitten by the zombie, a few blood-red letters gradually appeared. "You are dead." Yueyao was completely dumbfounded. She leaned on Mu Yaja's side in a daze. In the blink of an eye, she was covered in cold sweat. Mu Yaja was even more exhausted. He was using a support character to fight zombies, and he also had to protect the burly mercenary uncle controlled by Yueyao at all times. Tired. However, Mu Yaja looked at Yueyao with a doting expression. "Let's start again. Daddy will help you clear the stage." Sob, 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 sob. "So scary." Yueyao covered his face. "I heard that this level is the scariest part of the game. I don't dare to play it anymore." Mu Yaja suggested, "Why don't you use the little lowly and I'll use the mercenary?" Yueyao was very determined. "I can't even protect myself when I'm playing as a mercenary. I'll die even faster when I'm playing as a lowly." In this game, once a character died, the game would be over. Mu Yaja assured her, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Yueyao was skeptical. "Really? You don't believe Daddy?" "I do." The 2 of them tacitly exchanged controllers. Obviously, they were immersed in the exciting plot of the game. Although it was a little scary, they were still having a lot of fun. Yun Shirshir sat on the sofa quietly and watched the 2 of them play. On the surface, her eyes were fixed on the TV, but her mind was filled with Yu's disappointed expression and Natalia's unconscious appearance on the hospital bed. Her heart ached. The 2 children. No matter who it was, they would feel sorry for them. After an unknown amount of time, this section of the game was finally cleared. Yueyao jumped onto the sofa excitedly and jumped around. Mu Yaja chided, "Be careful not to fall." His doting feelings were obvious. Chapter 4695. "Mommy, what are you thinking about?" Mu Yaja noticed her hesitation and asked, "Didn't you go to the hospital just now? Has Nana woken up?" "Not yet." Yun Shirshir shook her head in disappointment. "I don't know when she'll wake up." Mu Yaja's expression darkened as he placed the controller on the table. Yueyao looked at Yun Shirshir and then at Mu Yaja. She looked a little lonely. She asked quietly, "Is brother still accompanying her in the hospital?" "Yeah. He probably won't come back tonight. It's good to let him guard her. Maybe Nana will wake up soon." "She'll wake up soon. She'll wake up soon." She didn't know how many times she had heard this sentence from him. Rather than saying it was a guess, it was more like saying it was a hope. However, hope was just hope. Every time, it would come to nothing. All the solutions that could be found had been implemented. They had gathered experts from all over the world and all of them felt that Natalia's situation was tricky. Many people asserted that Natalia might never wake up and advised them to give up. Only a family like the Mu family would be able to raise Natalia without breaking a sweat. If it were a normal family, perhaps they would have just dealt with it as euthanasia. Just as Yun Shirshir was worrying, Mu Yaja comforted her, "You don't have to worry too much. Everything is up to you. Life is full of disasters. We have also gone through many disasters to get to where we are now. Maybe this is Nana's disaster. She has to deal with it herself and get through it. We have already done everything we can." Yun Shirshir nodded and said, "I know. I also comfort myself like that. But seeing her lying on the bed and getting thinner and thinner, I just don't feel good. Mu Yaja frowned slightly. Actually, there are too many things in this world that we can't understand. Even with the advancement of science, there are still many diseases that we can't treat. Yeah. Yueyao asked, Mommy, did you remember to send the flowers? I won't forget. Yun Shirshir curls her lips into a smile. It's hard for someone as careless as Yueyao to remember the flowers. The flowers in the ward were always fresh. But no matter how fresh it was, and no matter how carefully he took care of it could not compare to the changes of the 4 seasons. Therefore, the flowers in the ward were always replaced, but they always had to ensure that there was always a fresh bouquet placed on the windowsill, symbolizing vitality. Yun Shirshir patted Yueyao's head. Go to bed early. I still want to play with Daddy. Yueyao pouted and said, I haven't cleared it yet. Don't you have classes tomorrow? Yueyao then tactfully stood up. At that time, Yueyao was already a university student. Although he was no longer nervous about his studies, it was most important to maintain a good work and rest schedule. Back then, Yun Shirshir considered sending Yueyao to study abroad. However, although Mu Yaja didn't say it on the surface, he actually couldn't bear to do it. But he was too embarrassed to say it directly. Therefore, he found excuses to interfere. For example, the security overseas was not good. What a discrimination! There were always terrorist attacks. He found many alarmist incidents and deliberately told them to Yun Shirshir. Of course, Yun Shirshir could see his intentions. She simply pretended to be confused and tacitly agreed that Yueyao should stay in the country to study. Chapter 4696. Previously, he had sent Yueyao abroad not because he thought that the quality of education abroad was good, but because he wanted her to be more independent and see the wider world. However, Mu Yaja was unwilling. When Yun Shirshir insisted on sending Yueyao abroad, he had even considered transferring his main business overseas. Yun Shirshir did not expect Mu Yaja to have such deep feelings for his daughter. All along, she had thought that Yueyao was too dependent on Mu Yaja. However, she later realized that the person she really relied on was Mu Yaja. He relied on his daughter too much. Since they were young, he had doted on Yueyao very much. He held her in his hands and was afraid that she would fall or melt in his mouth. The Gu Jinglian of the Gu family and the Mu Yaja of the Mu family seemed to be competing. They were like 2 slaves to their daughters. Mu Yaja was better. Although he doted on his daughter, he still had his principles. Gu Jinglian doted on his daughter unconditionally. He had almost no bottom line for his daughter. Fortunately, Chu Ho did not spoil his daughter. Gu Jinglian played the good cop, while Chu Ho played the bad cop. Otherwise, Gu Linga would be lawless. She urged Yueyao to go to sleep. When Yueyao entered the room, the smile on Yun Shirshir's face slowly disappeared. Mu Yaja saw her worried face and leaned over. He put his arm around her shoulder and said with a little heartache, "What are you thinking about?" The 2 of them had been married for many years. However, they were still very much in love. Although Mu Yaja was a slave to his daughter and doted on her like crazy, in private, he was clear about his priorities. He knew that she was the one who would accompany him for life. Therefore, he doted on her very much. Whenever she was unhappy, he would accompany her well. I'm thinking about why Nana hasn't woken up yet. This matter, did you meet the doctor when you went over today? No, it was already very late when I got there. Mu Yaja asked again, has you been accompanying her all this time? Oh. Mu Yaja patted her head gently and said, don't always worry about this and that. It feels like you have endless things to worry about every day. I'm really worried. Yun Shirshir said with some grievance, when I see Nana and you like that, my heart aches. As I said before, everyone's life will definitely not be smooth sailing. It's because happy days are never easily obtainable that they are so precious. We've been through a lot before we learned to cherish each other, Although Mu Yaja's words made sense, she just couldn't calm down. People will always have the idea of joint responsibility. You'll always take responsibility for the misfortune of others onto yourself. What do you mean? For example, your friend might have gotten into a car accident and is facing amputation. Therefore, you will sometimes feel guilty. Your friend is suffering, and you can't feel at ease about your happiness and joy. Another example is that Nana hasn't woken up yet. You can't change this fact, but you're also punishing yourself because of it. His words were meaningful, but they made her feel enlightened. That's because this isn't about responsibility or responsibility. People don't have to punish themselves because of the misfortune of others. Chapter 4697. Xianxia took a deep breath and said, I know. I won't let my imagination run wild anymore. Wuxia smiled, feeling gratified. He rubbed the back of her neck and leaned over. Just when he was about to kiss her on the lips, the sound of footsteps came from the side. It seemed that the person had seen this scene and was a little embarrassed, so he stopped abruptly. Wuxia and Xianxia turned their heads and saw Yueyao shuffling her slippers and blinking her eyes as she stood rooted to the ground. She immediately covered her eyes and tactfully turned her back. I didn't see anything. Xianxia wanted to pull away, but Wuxia hugged her tightly and didn't allow her to break free. They were husband and wife, and kissing was just a daily thing. It wasn't something that she felt guilty about, so there was nothing shameful about it. On the other hand, Yueyao was tactful enough to know that she had accidentally seen something that she shouldn't have peeked at. She also knew that it was inappropriate to look at something like that, so she immediately covered her eyes. In fact, since young, it was common for the children to see the couple being intimate occasionally. However, the children would be very happy about it. There was nothing more blissful than having a father and mother care about each other. When the parents had a good relationship, the children would also feel gratified. Yueyao pursed her lips and snickered. She immediately turned around and hurried into the room. Xianxia was extremely embarrassed. However, Wuxia laughed at her. What's there to be embarrassed about? It's not good for the child to see it. What's not good about it? Wuxia laughed. She'll have a family sooner or later, and she'll have a husband. Besides, kissing is common in movies. There's nothing shameful about it. The more he said, the closer he got to her. The two people's lips met again, and they were pressed together. Yueyao secretly hid in a corner and looked at the scene of Wuxia and Xianxia kissing. She covered her mouth and snickered. Just as the ruckus in the room finally subsided, Xianxia wrapped her arms around his waist and rested her head on his chest. Suddenly, she lamented, actually, if I think about it carefully, life is really short. I still vaguely feel that giving birth to Yueyao was only yesterday. Even the scene of you taking care of me and Yueyao during my confinement period is still vivid in my mind. Wuxia's lips curled into a smile. Suffering is often longer, but happiness is always short. I've calculated it. Even if we can live to 100 years old, you see, there are less than 20,000 days left. 20,000 days? How do you calculate it? 365 days multiplied by 60 years. Xianxia did a rough calculation. Wuxia hadn't really thought about this problem. After all, a man's mind wasn't as meticulous as a woman's. However, when he heard that the two of them had less than 20,000 days left together, he couldn't help but sigh. Why did you suddenly think of this question? I saw a video today of an old couple. The wife was in her 90s. At the end of her life, her husband held her hand and said, "I'm yours. Love you." I don't know why, but my tears fell when I saw it. She didn't think that she was a very emotional woman. However, when she saw this video, she seemed to think about it. Suddenly, she felt that when the day of parting came, it would be hard for them to part. Wuxia hugged her even tighter. Chapter 4698. Yueyao was lying on the bed with a poster pasted in the middle of the headboard. On the poster was a handsome young man with rosy lips and white teeth facing the camera. The young man looked to be about 17 years old. His exquisite features, well-defined contours, and pure eyes made one's heart race. It was as if they had returned to the time of their first love. In the corner of the poster, Jing Yang's signature was strong and vigorous like a swimming dragon. It was hard to imagine that such beautiful handwriting was written by this young man. This was Jing Yang's poster when he first debuted. In the blink of an eye, it had been 2 years since his debut. Even though Jing Yang had taken many posters after that, Yueyao had always kept this pictorial, which was taken when he first debuted and released his album. Every time before going to bed, she would lie on top of the pictorial and gently kiss his cheek before she could fall asleep peacefully. However, today, Yueyao hesitated as she looked at the pictorial and did not lean over. She looked at the young man with a gentle smile in the pictorial with some annoyance. She did not know when he would look at her with such a gentle smile. She opened WeChat. Her conversation with Jing Yang was always pinned at the top. However, he had not replied to her messages for a few days. Even when he did reply, it was cursory and cold. The 18-year-old Yueyao was experiencing her first awakening of love. She had an obscure yearning for the boy she loved. However, this yearning was not known to others. Even to Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja, she did not mention this little secret. She had liked Jing Yang for a long time. The two were childhood sweethearts and had a close relationship since they were young. However, due to an unforeseen event when they graduated from high school, Jing Yang's attitude toward her suddenly turned cold and distant. They were no longer as close as before. In the past, be it Yun Tianyu or Mu Yichen, they did not dote on her as much as he did. Now, they were like strangers. Was it because of that incident? Yueyao hugged her phone guiltily and pondered for a moment. Finally, she sent him a cute emoji. Brother Jing Yang, I've calculated that it's going to be your second anniversary soon. I heard from Mommy that your anniversary celebration will be held together with your birthday fan club. The message had been sent. However, there was no response for a long time. Yueyao felt a little wronged, but he couldn't bear to put down his phone, so he held it in his hand and quietly waited for her reply. After a long while, the message notification that he had been waiting for still did not ring out. Instead, she unknowingly fell asleep just like that. Baoli Apartments. After Jing Yang finished showering, he picked up his phone and laid down on the sofa. As he waited for his hair to dry naturally, he habitually opened WeChat. Amidst the long list of messages, a message from Yueyao appeared in his line of sight. Jing Yang frowned slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he opened it with a frown. Seeing Yueyao's message, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, but he still didn't reply. Including this message, there were dozens of messages that he had not replied to. She was already used to his indifference. Jing Yang exited WeChat and threw his phone on the sofa. The phone bounced on the sofa and fell to the ground, but he was too lazy to pick it up. Chapter 4699. The night gradually darkened. Bai Ran was a little uncomfortable with the bed. She tossed and turned and couldn't sleep well. The Gu residence was decorated in Chinese style. The room they were sleeping in had been renovated into a new Chinese style. The so-called new Chinese style abandoned many of the more repetitive Chinese styles. It took the essence of the Chinese style and added a modern and fashionable understanding. However, the solid wood bed was a little hard. In addition, she was uncomfortable with the bed. Bai Ran couldn't sleep no matter how hard she tried. Gu Qingze, who was next to her, was also half awake from her tossing and turning. He said in his sleep, "What's wrong? Did I wake you up?" Bai Ran was startled. The voice that suddenly sounded in her ear caught her off guard. Gu Qingze rubbed his eyes and pulled her into his arms. He first pinched her nose and said a little angrily, "It's so late and you're still awake. What's wrong?" "I'm uncomfortable with the bed. I can't sleep." "Why can't you sleep?" Gu Qingze was even more awake. He opened his sleepy eyes. In the room, the wall lamp was still on. Under the light, Bai Ran looked at him innocently and said with a little grievance, "Maybe the bed is too hard." But Gu Qingze was used to sleeping in it since he was young. He explained, "For as long as I can remember, the Gu residence was decorated in an antique style. Later, my mother felt that these decorations were a little too lifeless. Many of the rooms were renovated. In the past, before the renovation, he had always been very careful. This was because it was very likely that a vase placed in the room was a priceless antique. Gu Jinglian liked to collect antiques. In addition, the Gu family used to be a wealthy family. Many of the antiques that were passed down were more precious. Chu Ho was used to cleaning her room carefully. After almost knocking over antique vases and dressing mirrors several times, She repeatedly emphasized that the old residence should be renovated. Gu Jinglian naturally listened to her. Therefore, after the renovation, many of the precious items in the Gu residence were displayed in the ancestral hall. This residence has probably been around for many years. I remember that many Hong Kong-style ghost movies I watched when I was young were shot in such a gloomy residence. Gloomy? Gu Qingzi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her description. For a moment he couldn't refute it, because even he himself felt the same way. Gu Jinglian had grown up in this house, so he did not think much of it. However, when he moved into this house when he was 5 years old, he always felt that the house was too big. Not only did he often get lost, but at night, he always felt that something would emerge from every corner. It was not hard to understand why Bai Hao was so afraid. In the future, we shouldn't decorate in a new Chinese style. Bai Kun couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Gu Qingzi heard this and asked, "What style do you like?" "Northern Europe. If it's a smaller house, the Nordic style will make it look very warm and cozy." "Nordic logs?" "Actually, there are many styles in Northern Europe, just like there are many styles in Neo-Chinese. I like Little Northern Europe. It gives people a sober feeling. It's best to have a large area of white walls. When the sun shines in through the windows, the whole house feels very warm." "All right, I'll listen to you." Gu Qingzi didn't care about the renovation. "But I also think that the American style is not bad." Chapter 4700. Gu Qingzi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Okay, you can decorate it in any style you want." He didn't seem to understand Bai Ran's distress. She turned her head and said helplessly, "We only have one house. I like Northern Europe and American styles, so I'm a little conflicted." Gu Qingzi suggested, "Our house isn't small, and it's not bad to pick a height. Why don't we decorate it in an American style?" Bai Ran nodded. She had wanted to consider Gu Qingzi's opinion. However, she was reluctant to part with the Northern European style that she liked. Gu Qingzi knew that she liked Northern Europe, so he said, "When we get older, we'll buy another apartment. It's smaller and doesn't need to be too big. We'll just decorate it in a Northern European style. What do you think?" "Apartment? Yeah. Why do you want to buy another apartment?" Bai Ran didn't understand. "Isn't one house enough? In the future, if the child studies, we'll buy an apartment opposite the school. That way, it'll be convenient for him to go to and from school." The traffic in the capital was very congested, and there were restrictions on the number of cars. In terms of convenience, if they bought an apartment opposite the school, it would be convenient for the child to go to and from school, and it would also allow the child to sleep well and not worry about being late for the traffic. That's a good suggestion. Bai Ran also thought that it was a good idea. However, when she thought about how he was actually thinking about the child's studies, she blushed and said shyly, "Don't you think it's too early to think about the child?" But Gu Qingzi raised his eyebrows. "We're already married. Is it too late to start thinking about the child after we're married?" "That's true." Bai Ran wanted to bury her burning face in the blanket. She said guiltily, "It hasn't been long since we registered our marriage." "But you're still..." "Still what?" Gu Qingzi saw that she wanted to say something but stopped herself. He reached out and pinched her face, guiding her. "Still what? Tell me." Bai Ran squeezed her palms and said in one go, "We haven't had a wedding yet." For some reason, Gu Qingzi's heart warmed when he heard her mention the wedding. This way, he was completely sure of her feelings. She was sure of him. Otherwise, with her conservative personality, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to mention the wedding. Thus, he said, "It's not too late to start preparing for the wedding now." Bai Kong looked at him in surprise. "You like American-style decorations? Then, what kind of wedding theme do you like?" Gu Qingzi's slender fingers gently twirled her silky hair, his handsome brows raised slightly. "Chinese style? Western style? I think the white wedding dress is not bad. Don't you like the Chinese red veil?" When Bai Yu heard this, he exclaimed, "Do you prefer a traditional wedding?" Gu Qingzi said, "It doesn't matter. I just remembered that when my father and mother got married, they held a very traditional Chinese wedding. But a Western-style wedding isn't bad either. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a white wedding gown." As he spoke, his gentle gaze landed on her face. She would definitely look beautiful in her white wedding gown at her wedding. Chapter 4701. Traveling Wedding? Gu Qingze was a little surprised. He was surprised because for a girl, holding a romantic wedding with her family and friends as witnesses, wearing a white veil, and receiving blessings. Wasn't that her biggest dream? Bai Ran did not seem to notice Gu Qingze's surprised expression and said, "My dream is to wear a wedding dress and board a hot air balloon in Turkey with the person I love." Wow, that must be very romantic and exciting. What about the wedding? Gu Qingze asked tentatively, "Do you not want to go through with the wedding?" Bai Ran did not speak for a moment. Gu Qingze guessed that she must have a knot in her heart, so he said, "Are you worried about something? Why don't you tell me and see if I can solve it?" Bai Ran looked at him and suddenly sighed. "It's not a knot in my heart. It's just that since we're holding a wedding, we have to invite guests. However, my parents passed away when I was young, so they couldn't personally send me off. Also, I don't have many friends and I don't get along well with many colleagues." Bai Ran had attended a wedding in the past. Before the wedding, her mother personally combed her daughter's hair, and her father held her hand and personally handed her to the groom. Bai Ran was very touched, but at the same time, she felt a little lonely. Because such a scene would never happen to her again. Although the fact that her parents left her was a very distant memory, some scenes and things would inevitably touch her. She also yearned to have a grand wedding of her own. However, if she were to get married alone without her family by her side, she would feel a little lonely. She could not let her uncle and aunt be her, although they were indeed her guardians all these years. However, at the wedding, she did not want to see these two people who had almost ruined her life at all. "I still want to get married like a traveling wedding," Bai Ran said lightly. After a pause, she suddenly said, "However, I still need to hear your opinion on this. Will your parents care about a traveling wedding? If you like a traveling wedding, then let's get married." Gu Qingze did not care about the form of the wedding. Whether it was a trip or a ceremony, it was fine as long as she was the one by his side in the end. "Why don't you ask your mother for her opinion?" Bai Ran considered that many elders would probably not be able to accept a traveling wedding easily. She always felt that there was something wrong with getting married on a trip, and it was also not traditional. Gu Qingze ruffled her hair helplessly. "Idiot, marriage is our business. Why do we have to ask for the elders' opinions? Won't your family mind if we get married while traveling?" Gu Qingze pinched her nose and reminded her, "My house? This is also your home, our home." I was wrong. I won't say anything wrong about our family in the future." Bai Dan immediately corrected himself seriously. Gu Qingze said, "I'll let them know tomorrow. However, you don't have to think so much." Satisfied, Bai Yan fell asleep with him in his arms. It seemed that she was really tired and couldn't care less about the bed. Marriage during a trip? Chapter 4702. Yes, Jean said that she prefers to get married on a trip. After a pause, Gu Qingze continued, "However, getting married on a trip doesn't conflict with the ceremony. It's not a problem to hold the ceremony when we come back. I think Jean also wants to hold the ceremony, but with her situation, she might encounter some awkwardness." Awkwardness? Chu Ho was stunned for a moment and did not understand. What awkwardness? Didn't Jean's parents pass away early? Most of her relatives are gone, and she doesn't have any close friends or classmates. Her relationship with her colleagues is also average. She doesn't have many close people. Who will send her off? When Chu Ho heard this, his lips curled into a smile. "Have you forgotten? When Mom married your mom, there were no parents to send her off. The ceremony was still very successful." Gu Qingze nodded. "Indeed, but I don't remember the wedding process very clearly at that time." Chu Ho glared at him. "Other than your Jean, what else do you remember clearly?" "I remember that you and Dad hit me." When Chu Ho heard this, he was angry and helpless. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Can't you remember some good things about people? Mom has too many good things, so it's easy to remember her bad things." Gu Qingze's words were as if they were smeared with honey. Ever since he was young, Chu Ho was most satisfied with the development of his emotional intelligence. When he was young, he was clumsy, silly, and did not know how to speak. He often bickered with Gu Jinglian, and the father and son quarreled endlessly. The older he grew, the more he learned to say sweet things. People were like this. They only listened to the good things. Only then did he feel satisfied. Alright, if you really want to get married on a trip, it's not impossible. It's not too late to hold the ceremony when you come back. The marriage is between the two of you. You don't have to specifically ask for our opinion. We still have to ask. Gu Qingzi cleared his throat. Otherwise, how can we get back the money that we've given out? Ever since they were young, Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian had given out millions of yuan. No matter what, he had to earn back a huge sum of money. Moreover, Mu Yazha had made a bet with Gu Jinglian. Whichever family got married first would have to contribute a 7-figure sum. 7 digits. It was very impressive. For this reason, Gu Qingzi wanted to hold a proper wedding. If he had nothing to do, he could still make a living in the office. If he got married, he could at least get back an 8-figure sum. At that time, he could use this money to buy a villa. It would be too comfortable. When Chu Ho heard him say this, he couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Just because of this, we have to hold this wedding. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. I've contributed so much, so I have to take it back. Yes. Gu Qingzi nodded. Then, let's have a Western-style wedding. How about holding it in a church? Chu Ho asked, what does Ro think? Does she want to get married in a church? She prefers wedding dresses. I think that holding a wedding in a church is both grand and romantic. She should like it. Chu Ho sighed. It was hard on him to have so many considerations just to give Ro a grand wedding. You guys can discuss it later. As long as your opinions are the most important. Chapter 4703. Gu Qingzi nodded and went straight to the point. Will you and Dad sponsor the wedding? Chu Ho was caught off guard. So, after all that talk, he was waiting for her here. Sponsor. Gu Qingzi said helplessly, the money I've earned since graduation isn't enough for the wedding. It's already hard enough to renovate the house. Chu Ho said coldly, what about your salary? I remember that you get dividends at the middle and end of every year. Yes, I do, Gu Qingzi said. I bought a condominium and invested. If I take out the money from my cash flow and the cash flow breaks, then I'll have earned all these years for nothing. Chu Ho asked again, I remember that Yun Tianyu gave you a house? Half a gift. Gu Qingzi complained, luckily, I got married first. If he got married first, I'd have to borrow money as a wedding gift. Borrow? Chu Ho's eyes lit up and he said, sponsorship won't work, but I can lend you the wedding expenses. Also, I can discuss with your dad and see if the interest can be lower. Gu Qingzi probed, how much is the interest? The annual interest won't be more than 1 cent, so high. Gu Qingzi protested, the bank loans are only 9%. Take it or leave it. Okay, Gu Qingzi braced himself. I'll lend it. Just write an IOU and give it to your dad. Gu Qingzi went upstairs and entered the study to write the IOU. Before writing the IOU, he naturally had to consider the budget for the wedding. First of all, they already had the wedding house. Since it was such a big house, it naturally had to be renovated. The hard and soft decorations would cost at least 500,000 to 600,000. After that, it was time for the invitations and wedding candies. There were so many people in the Gu family. Although they were going to have a Western-style wedding, it was best to choose a church with a big lawn and garden to decorate it properly. Including the buffet and wedding scenery, it would cost 200,000 to 300,000. This was actually a small part. The real big part was the budget for the wedding trip. Although it wasn't a trip around the world, it was still a 1-month trip. It was best to prepare sufficient funds. Bai Chang said that she wanted to go to the seaside. Then, the seaside was famous for its scenic spots. Not only the Maldives and Sri Lanka, but also Saipan. Just the 7 Stars Island in the Maldives alone cost about 50,000 to 60,000 per person per week, not including other expenses. In addition to these coastal countries, there were many other countries that could be visited. Paris, for example, was a place that many girls yearned for even in their dreams. Louvre, Paris, Provence, since they were going to travel and get married, then they should have fun and not leave any regrets. With this calculation, it was another 1 million. In the end, to play it safe, Gu Qingze wrote an IOU for 5 million and went to Gu Jinglian. The moment Gu Jinglian took the IOU, his eyelids twitched violently. 5 million? Chu Ho had mentioned this to him before. However, the IOU of 5 million was beyond his expectations. I've already agreed on a 10% interest rate. I'll pay it back in 2 years. 5 million, 2 years? Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows and glanced at him. Are you sure you can pay it back? Chapter 4704. Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. It's good that you know. But 5 million, why is it so much? Gu Qingze's lips curled into a smile as he handed over the list of wedding preparations that he had prepared. Gu Jinglian glanced at it. It was not that Gu Jinglian could not afford a mere 5 million yuan. 5 million was not even worth mentioning to him. But to Gu Qingze, who had just graduated and did not have a strong foundation, 5 million was indeed a little too much. Without the help of his family, he could bear the debt of 5 million and settle it within 2 years. It had to be said that Gu Qingze's courage was far beyond Gu Jinglian's imagination. It was different from other families. The Gu family was especially strict with their sons. Actually, 5 million was just a matter for Gu Linge to act coquettishly. But to Gu Qingze, Gu Linxi, and even Gu Xinghan, it was an astronomical figure. However, no matter who it was, no one would have any objections to this invisible rule. From a young age, Chu Ho had instilled in the children that the men of the Gu family had to be indomitable even if they left the Gu family. In this world, any dynasty would eventually fall. There was a saying that wealth would not last more than 3 generations. No matter how strong an empire was, there would be a day when it would fall with the replacement of the royal power. Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian hoped that their sons would succeed, not because they hoped that the Gu family would prosper in the hands of the next generation. They hoped that they could cultivate the ability to withstand setbacks from a young age. A man would only be strong if he had a strong heart. Gu Jinglian looked at it carefully and felt that there was no problem. He said, "You and Jean will only have one wedding in your life. It should be well planned." Then, has father approved it? Yes. Gu Jinglian kept the receipt. It will be in the account in the afternoon. Okay. Gu Qingze sighed in relief. When he returned to the bedroom, Bai Ran had just woken up. She was rinsing her mouth, brushing her teeth, and washing her face. She walked out of the bathroom and saw Gu Qingze holding his phone as if he was looking up some information. She had no idea that Gu Qingze had already planned their wedding in an orderly manner in just one morning. He had even prepared the funds for the wedding. What are you looking at? She walked over and stood next to him. Gu Qingze was looking at various travel guides. She glanced at him and saw that he was reading a holiday guide for the Maldives. Maldives? Well, didn't you say that you want to travel and get married? Bai Hao was surprised. You've already communicated with Mom and Dad? Yes, they agreed. However, I still feel that since there is only one wedding, I still hope to hold a ceremony. Since he said so, Bai Kun naturally agreed. He had already fulfilled her dream of traveling and getting married, so she would definitely support his idea. A church wedding? I'll take a look at the venue tomorrow. It's best if it's one with a garden and lawn. After the wedding, the guests can have a buffet in the garden. Bai Dan imagined for a moment. She felt that a Western-style wedding in a garden was something that could only be seen in movies. All of a sudden, she was looking forward to the wedding ceremony. It's beautiful just by imagining it. Chapter 4705. Bai Ran said, "Then when are we going on the trip? When is the wedding? I'm ready to get ready." What do you need to prepare? Mental preparation is still mental preparation. Bai Ran said, I want to do some travel homework, such as some guides and notes. When we go on the trip, I want to write a diary. Oh, Gu Qingze suddenly thought of something and his expression fell silent. He looked at Bai Ran and said in a negotiating tone, Ran, the trip can be any time, but the wedding will have to wait for a while. What's wrong? Gu Qingze said, I want to wait for a friend to wake up and invite her to our wedding. When Bai Ran heard this, she was a little surprised. What do you mean? I don't really understand. I have a friend. She's still in a coma and hasn't woken up. I think, at least when she wakes up, I want her to witness my wedding. If she's absent, when she wakes up in the future, she'll definitely blame me. When Bai Ran heard this, she suddenly remembered. I remember. I think I've heard you mention it before. I think her name is Nana, right? I heard it when you guys were chatting. What's going on? Gu Qingze shook his head. Did something happen, that's why? Bai Ran finally mustered up her courage and asked. At first, I thought that something had happened to her and she became a vegetable. She's been unconscious, but from what you guys said, it doesn't seem to be the case. I think that no matter what the problem is, medical technology is so advanced now. A solution will definitely be found. That's true, Gu Qingze frowned. With Xingyu's strength, all the authorities in this field in this world have already been invited to take a look, but they couldn't find any solution. Her vital signs are all normal, but she hasn't woken up, so. Didn't we say when she would wake up? No one can say for sure. Gu Qingze sighed. Even so, I still want to wait for a while. The few of us grew up together. Everyone has agreed that no matter how big the matter is, as long as it's any of our weddings, we can't be absent. I don't want her to be absent, and I want to wait a little longer. I think that maybe she'll wake up soon? In short, I still have some hope. Bai Ran gently covered the back of his hand and smiled. Then I'll wait for her with you. No matter what, they had to wait for her to wake up before getting married. After all, this was something that everyone had agreed on. As for the wedding, it wouldn't be too late to wait until she woke up. Wouldn't that be more meaningful? You don't mind? Why should I mind? On the contrary, I feel that you are very sentimental. Blushing, Bai Ran said, I like it very much. Hearing this, Gu Qingze reached out and gently pinched her cheek. Ju, oh, thank you. What are you thanking me for? I'm your wife. No matter what you think, I'll definitely be the first to support it. Also, I think that when your friend wakes up, our wedding will be more meaningful. Bai Kun's understanding made Gu Qingze extremely touched. He knew that Bailey was also looking forward to the wedding, but he still wanted to wait for Natalia to wake up. Chapter 4706. Bai Ran had always wanted to meet the girl whom Gu Qingze mentioned was in a coma. Gu Qingze agreed to. That night, after the two of them had dinner, Gu Qingze brought Bai Ran to the hospital. It was still the same ward. Through the door, they could see the nurse guarding the bed. There was a fresh bouquet of flowers at the head of the bed. The curtains were gently drawn, so they could not see the person lying on the bed. Bai Ran glanced at Gu Qingze and asked softly, Can we go in? Wait a moment, let me ask. Gu Qingze pushed the door open and consciously knocked on the door. The nurse immediately stood up and looked at Gu Qingze with a smile. Master Gu, what brings you here today? I want to see Nana. With that, Gu Qingze pushed Bai Ran to the nurse and smiled. This is my wife. Her name is Bai Ran. Hello, Mrs. Gu. The nurse greeted her politely. Bai Ran nodded in return. Gu Qingze asked, Is it convenient to come in now? After all, there was a difference between men and women. Natalia was often in bed, so he had to be more cautious about her. The nurse said, Master Gu, wait for me for a while. I'll cover her with the blanket. As she spoke, she walked to the bed and covered Natalia with a blanket. Only then did she let Gu Qingze and Bai Ran into the ward. As soon as the two of them entered the ward, the nurse gently pulled the curtain open. At that moment, under the moonlight, Natalia's beautiful and refined face was reflected in Bai Ran's eyes. Bai Ran had never seen such a beautiful girl. She had exquisite facial features and beautiful hair. Even though she was in a coma for so long and looked a little haggard, she did not look disheveled under the meticulous care. Even in a hospital gown, it could not conceal her beauty. Bai Ran was stunned for a moment. Gu Qingze held her hand and walked to the bed. Bai Ran was so shocked that she could not recover from her shock. Too beautiful. Bai Ran originally imagined that, given how outstanding Yun Tianyu was, the person in his heart should be a very outstanding girl too. Judging from her face alone, her exquisite face was indeed stunning under the moonlight. Gu Qingze smiled. She's lost a lot of weight. Otherwise, she wouldn't look so haggard. Bai Kun recovered from his shock and said helplessly, "There's nothing we can do about it. After all, she's been unconscious and can't eat normally. Her energy is also limited, so she looks a little thin. But it's okay. When she wakes up, she'll be well nourished and she'll slowly recover." At the mention of waking up, Gu Qingze and the caregiver's expressions darkened at the same time. At first, he still had some hope that Natalia would regain her consciousness, but now he felt that his hopes were dwindling. Gu Qingze did not know if Yu could wait until Natalia woke up. Although they seemed to be confident that she would wake up sooner or later, everyone felt a little uncertain in their hearts. In the beginning, he still believed that she would wake up. As time passed, she slept longer and longer. None of the authoritative experts dared to make any assertions. As a result, Gu Qingze gradually lost his confidence. From the initial conviction to the subsequent confusion, he prayed. White Haze looked at Natalia in silence. He felt sorry for her. Chapter 4707. Gu Qingze nodded and said, "Yeah, she's asleep. She'll wake up one day." Just as he finished speaking, footsteps were heard from outside the door. Bai Yong heard the footsteps and turned around to see two people standing at the door. Because they were facing away from the light and the corridor, she couldn't see them clearly. She could only vaguely feel that they were two men. One was about 1.9 meters tall and the other was about 1.8 meters tall. When the two men walked in and Bai Yong saw one of the men, she gasped and her mouth fell open in shock. Hua! Hua! When the two men walked into the room, the man's beautiful face was revealed under the moonlight. Bai Yong was even more shocked. Oh my God! It was Hua Jin. This man had practically taken over her childhood memories. Gu Qingze and Hua Jin were her two favorite childhood names. Unfortunately, Gu Qingze had passed away when she was very young due to an unknown accident. Even though she didn't know the reason, she still felt that Gu Qingze's death was a pity. Hua Jin, on the other hand, was the superstar after Gu Qingze. He was also the expected successor. Almost everyone agreed that Hua Jin was the only one who could take over Gu Xingze's position. And Hua Jin didn't disappoint. Over the years, he had acted in many classic television dramas. Because of his high ratings and reputation, Hua Jin began to develop his career in the film industry. At the age of 28, he became the youngest person after Gu Xingze to win 2 Best Actor awards. After winning 2 Best Actor awards at the Golden Chapter Film Festival and the 100 Flowers Film Festival, Hua Jin officially announced his retirement from the entertainment industry. At that time, there was an uproar. Everyone couldn't understand why he would retire from the entertainment industry at the peak of his career. At the age of 28, he had won 2 Best Actor awards. His dazzling path to stardom had just begun. After winning 2 Best Actor awards, Hua Jin's net worth had almost doubled. Other than that, he had also been offered more outstanding scripts and advertising contracts. At this moment, he was the epitome of glory that many people could not hope to achieve. At this moment, it was as if a myriad of things had gathered on him. Yet, at a time like this, he inexplicably announced his retirement. Many people suspected that Hua Jin's announcement was just a publicity stunt. After all, as an artist, he wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. Hua Jin had settled down for so long, and now that he had finally achieved Gu Xingze's success, it was only natural that he should strike while the iron was hot. Yet, he said he wanted to retire. This time, there were no scandals and nothing much happened. There was no news that he was going to get married or have a rumored girlfriend. He was actually going to retire. The fans were extremely upset. Many of them were wringing their hands and sighing, but some still felt that Hua Jin would return sooner or later. Who would have thought that he would really retire from the entertainment industry? He held a grand press conference to announce his retirement and apologize to his fans. As an idol, he wasn't able to walk with them to the end. After the press conference, the fans cried. Some gave their blessings, while others didn't understand. After this, there was no more news about Hua Jin. Chapter 4708. Hua Jin? Is that Hua Jin? She nervously grabbed Gu Qingze's arm and asked in trepidation, "Am I seeing things?" "It's actually Hua Jin." Gu Qingze laughed. "Yes, you're not seeing things. It's Hua Jin." "Impossible? Bai Kun slapped his face a few times, but he still couldn't come back to his senses. Am I dreaming? Why am I seeing Hua Jin here? At this moment, Hua Jin had already walked over with another man beside him. He was tall and had exquisite features. His pair of almond-shaped eyes gave him a devilish charm. Hua Jin was already very tall to her, but the man beside him was so much taller than Hua Jin that she had to raise her head to look at him. She was dumbfounded when she saw the two of them walk in together. Gu Qingze politely greeted, "Uncle Rong, Uncle Jie." Gong Jie nodded slightly before his gaze landed on Bai Yu. "This is Yu Er, let me formally introduce you. This uncle is Gong Jie, Yun Tianyou's uncle. I'll call him uncle. This is Hua Jin. Yes, he's your former idol Hua Jin. Actually, his surname is Rong. Hua Jin is just his stage name. You can follow me and call him Uncle Rong." Bai Yu blushed instantly. "Uncle Jie, Uncle Rong." She obediently greeted them. She was so nervous in front of her former idol that she did not know where to place her hands. Gu Qingze then introduced her to Hua Jin and Gong Jie. "This is Yu Er, my wife." Gong Jie raised a brow. "Your new wife?" Hua Jin could not help laughing. "What do you mean by new wife? Why does this sound so awkward?" As the three of them exchanged pleasantries, Bai Yu felt that she could not hear anything clearly. Her mind was filled with suspicion. Why would Hua Jin appear here for no reason? Furthermore, so many years had passed, but why did Hua Jin give her the feeling that he hadn't changed at all? He was still the same as he was in the past. The only difference was that he gave off a much more mature and steady feeling. Bai Ran suddenly moved closer to Gu Qingze and whispered, "Am I really not dreaming? Why are they here?" "Because they're Natalia's guardians." "They?" Bai Hao turned to look at Hua Jin and then at Gong Jie. He didn't understand. "I'll talk to you later." Hua Jin didn't hear what they were talking about, so he asked, "Is Nana still unconscious?" Gu Qingze nodded lightly. "It's still the same." Hua Jin's eyes were filled with disappointment. He walked to the bed and sat beside it. He gently held Natalia's hand, his heart aching. Gong Jie stood beside the bed silently. Looking at Natalia's still pale face, his eyes revealed a hidden sense of disappointment. Gu Qingze held Bai Yu's hand and left the ward silently. Outside the corridor, Bai Yu looked at him curiously, waiting for him to explain. The two of them, could it be? It couldn't be what she was thinking, right? "What are you thinking?" Bai Yu blushed and stammered. "I was thinking that the two of them couldn't be a couple, right?" Hiss. Chapter 4709. Bai Hao sucked in a breath of cold air. "Oh, God!" She widened her eyes in disbelief. Is this true? Why? Do you have any thoughts?" "It's not that I have any thoughts." Bai Ran said honestly, "I actually think sexual orientation isn't a big deal. Men and women are the same. But maybe it's because it happened to my idol that I'm surprised." "Idol?" This time, it was Gu Qingze's turn to be surprised. "So, Uncle Rong is your idol?" "His fan?" "Yes, I used to like Hua Jin and a celebrity, but unfortunately, he's no longer around." Gu Qingze suddenly stopped in his tracks and stopped moving. Bai Ran took a few steps forward and was surprised when he suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" "No. Nothing. You said you have another idol. Who is it?" Bai Ran recalled seriously. "Gu Xingze, Gu. Actually, my memories of Xingze are really distant. I remember that when I was very young, he passed away in an accident. After he announced his retirement from the entertainment industry, he met with an accident. Later, when I looked back at the news, many people said that it wasn't a simple accident, but a conspiracy. At that time, they said that Yun Shishir implicated Gu Xingze and was his nemesis. When I was young, I watched his movies and television dramas. At that time, I just thought that this man was really handsome and I liked him so much. After I grew up, I learned to understand him through various channels and realized that after I got to know him better, he was really a childish idol. It's just a pity that he died so young." After a pause, Bai Ran suddenly thought of something. "Speaking of which, your name and Xingze's are only one word apart. Also, you look quite similar." No wonder she felt an inexplicable sense of closeness to him. Gu Qingze hesitated for a while before saying, "Actually, according to seniority, he's my uncle. But unfortunately, I don't think. I've seen him before." "Your uncle?" Bai Hao petrified and gazed at him for a long time. "Yes, he's my father's biological younger brother, but, in the Gu family, he's an illegitimate child. In a more traditional way, he's the son of a concubine. Therefore, he has always been exiled and has never revealed his close relationship with the Gu family to the outside world." After a pause, Gu Qingze said honestly, "My name was given to me by my father in memory of him. Didn't you notice? My younger brother, Gu Xinghan, has the word Xing in his name, so it's also to commemorate him." Xinghan. Qingze, it adds up to Xianxia. Ugh. Bai Hao was still bewildered. He didn't react for a long time. She lowered her head, suddenly not knowing what to say. Her childhood idol was actually her husband's uncle? Her husband was actually her idol's nephew. What kind of fate was this? No wonder. Other than their names, Gu Qingze was similar to Gu Xingze in both appearance and temperament. Actually, Gu Qingze looked more like Chu Ho, but he also resembled Gu Jinglian. Chapter 4710. Gu Jinglian and Gu Xingze were half-brothers. Therefore, although Gu Qingze and Gu Xingze looked similar, they were not so similar that one could recognize them at a glance. Therefore, Bai Yu was extremely surprised. "When did you find out?" "Probably when I was in junior high school. I saw his name in the ancestral hall once. Out of curiosity, I asked and found out that Gu Xingze was my uncle." Bai Yu nodded. Gu Qingze sighed. "I always felt that it was a pity for my uncle. Dad gave me this name to commemorate him. Is it for some kind of continuation?" "You can say that." Gu Qingze thought for a while. "I rarely hear my dad talk about my uncle. However, I can tell that when he does talk about him, there is a hint of regret and guilt in his voice." "Guilt? Why is he guilty?" Bai Yu did not quite understand this point. Dad felt that he was too harsh on him in the past. Therefore, after my uncle passed away, he felt that it was a pity. We were born from the same root. After all, there was still some affection between us. Bai Yu did not know why, but she felt a little heavy. The death of her idol was a sad thing. Now that she mentioned it again, she still felt a little heavy. "I hope that he will be happy in his next life. I hope that there will be a next life." On the way home, Bai Yu suddenly became much less talkative. She looked blankly out of the window and her mind was filled with thoughts. On one hand, she was thinking about when Natalia would wake up. On the other hand, she was shocked. She did not expect to see her idol under such circumstances. Until now, she had not recovered from her shock. In the ward, Gong Jie and Hua Jin sat by the bed and looked at Natalia lying on the bed. Looking at her pale face, they were extremely sad. Hua Jin looked at Gong Jie and said sadly, "Nana has been unconscious for so long. Qingze is already married. Did you hear what he said just now? He wants to wait until Nana wakes up before holding the wedding." Gong Jie said half jokingly and half seriously, "I hope Nana won't keep Qingze waiting for too long." Hua Jin nodded. He gently placed his hand on the back of Natalia's hand. The cool sensation made his heart ache even more. "Why is this hand so cold?" He picked up her hand, blew on it a few times, rubbed it gently, and held it in his palm. Some time ago, he and Gong Jie had gone abroad to find a few experts in this field. However, no one could say for sure about Natalia's situation. How many years had it been? Natalia's situation hadn't improved at all. Gong Jie looked at Hua Jin's distressed expression and felt sorry for him. Apart from feeling sorry for Natalia, he also felt sorry for Hua Jin. All these years, for Natalia's sake, Hua Jin had been running around asking for help, trying to find a way to cure her illness. Back then, Hua Jin had retired from the entertainment industry. On one hand, it was because he had already won 2 Best Actor awards. He was satisfied. On the other hand, it was because of Natalia. He wanted to leave the entertainment industry completely so that he could have more time to take care of Natalia. However, to everyone's surprise, Natalia's condition worsened all of a sudden. It worsened so quickly that she still hadn't woken up. Many people advised them to give up. Chapter 47:11. Gu Qingze and Bai Ran had already agreed to hold the wedding after Natalia woke up. However, before that, they could start their trip first. Gu Qingze had already planned his trip meticulously. The first stop of the trip was Hong Kong. After that, they would take a flight from Hong Kong to Paris. At first, Bai Ran's impression of Hong Kong was that it was filled with skyscrapers and skyscrapers. After that, it would probably be a paradise for shopping maniacs. When they were waiting for the plane, Bai Ran was actually a little nervous. Gu Qingze was a little curious. He thought that she had never been on a plane before. Bai Ran had also forgotten if she had ever been on a plane before. When she was young, she had already forgotten if she had ever been on a plane before. However, after her parents passed away, she had never been on a plane again. Other than the summer and winter camps held by her school, as well as the spring and autumn outings, she had never gone out to have fun. Therefore, when she was on the plane, it was obvious that she was a little nervous. The flight from the capital to the airport was a little long. When she first boarded the plane, Bai Ran was still a little nervous. Other than nervousness, she was also a little excited. When the plane took off, she leaned against the window. Because it happened to be evening when the plane took off, when the plane passed through the hazy clouds, she could see the rose-red sunset at a glance. The layers of sunset glow were like an oil painting. With the passage of time, it slowly changed from a rose color to a mellow wine red. At first glance, it was as if the clouds were on fire. It was as beautiful as a painting. The setting sun was like golden dust falling down, embellishing the sea of clouds. It penetrated the sea of clouds, sparkling and mottled, making it difficult for people to distinguish whether this was a painting or a beautiful dream. Bai Ran leaned against the window and looked at the beautiful scenery in a daze. For a long time, she could not sit up straight. Gu Qingze looked helplessly at her, admiring the sunset. Just now, he still remembered that when they were in the waiting hall, he had told her that after the plane took off, it happened to be evening. The sunset was the most beautiful time. The beautiful sunset scenery from the plane was rarely seen on the ground. However, Bai Ran did not think much of it. She did not expect that it would be a large-scale scene. Isn't it beautiful? Beautiful. Just now, someone said that there was no beautiful scenery to enjoy on the plane and didn't think much of it. Now it seems like, so beautiful. Bai Ran didn't care about his joke anymore. The beautiful sunset flashed by, and she didn't want to miss even a minute. She picked up her phone and took a series of photos of the beautiful scenery. Seeing this, Gu Qingze immediately snatched her phone away. Bai Yan was startled. What are you doing? Real beautiful scenery is not recorded with a phone. What do you mean? Gu Qingze reached out and pulled her face back. Looking out the window, he whispered into her ear, "Idiot, of course I'm using my eyes to capture it." Indeed, Bai Ran was admiring the beautiful scenery outside the window. At the same time, he realized that no matter how beautiful the scenery was, it would be difficult to look at it again even if he took a picture with his phone. However, the beauty that was recorded with the eyes was rooted in the bottom of one's heart, and one would never forget it. So beautiful. Such a beautiful scene could not be captured with a mobile phone. But what if I suddenly forget about such a beautiful scenery? Chapter 47:12. If you've forgotten, I'll take you on the evening flight again and let you see it to your heart's content. His doting tone made Bai Yan feel flattered. She had always felt Gu Qingze's love for her. However, she felt that she was being spoiled by him unconditionally. If I want to see the sunset, you'll take me on the plane. If I want to see the stars in the sky, will you pluck them for me? She was only joking, but he actually considered it seriously. Do you know how big a star is? Isn't it the size of a grain of rice? The small debris from the collision between stars can become meteorites and smash a hole in the earth. Gu Qingze gestured seriously. Comparing it to a star is like comparing a speck of dust to a mountain. Really? Bai Yan widened her eyes in disbelief. A star is that big? Very big. Gu Qingze continued, also, do you know? A star alone might be as big as a galaxy. Bai Yan listened very seriously. Originally, her concept of a star was just a diamond in the night sky. However, after Gu Qingze's explanation, She realized that humans were such insignificant creatures. The Earth and the Sun are just small units in a galaxy. Guess how big a galaxy is? It's definitely bigger than the Sun and the stars combined. After Gu Qingzi's serious explanation, Bai Yan realized how unreasonable it was for her to ask him to pluck the stars. Although it was a joke, she was still shocked by Gu Qingzi's explanation. She suddenly became interested and did not care about the scenery outside the window. Coincidentally, Gu Qingzi had also done some research on astronomy. On the plane, the two of them started to discuss the mysteries of the universe. Gu Qingzi was very interested in the universe and astronomy. When he was in university, if he did not consider preparing to take over the Gu Corporation in the future, he would have enrolled in the astronomy department without hesitation. Although he studied economics, he made friends with a group of classmates who were interested in astronomy. During his second year in university, he pestered Chu Ho to give him a reflecting telescope. It was still hidden in his apartment. Usually, such a precious object would be covered with a cover, so Bai Kun did not notice her. She didn't touch the things in his room. She only knew that there was something covered by a white cover, but she didn't expect that the thing inside the cover was actually used to observe the stars. So, it's a reflecting telescope? Yes. Then I can also look at the stars in the sky through a telescope in the future? Gu Qingzi nodded. As long as you want to. Astronomy was a particularly mysterious thing. At first, most people's most intuitive reaction to astronomy was probably, isn't it just a few stars? It was black and glowing. No matter how he looked at it, it was nothing more than that. However, once one entered the field of astronomy and slowly delved into it, one would find that astronomy was really a fascinating field. Other than broadening his horizons, if Yunqi was good, he would be able to observe the stars of the universe, something that ordinary people would never have the chance to see. Gu Qingzi had always treasured this telescope, and it was impossible to buy it on the market. Chapter 47:13. It was not a long flight from the capital to Hong Kong. However, it was already evening by the time they boarded the plane. When they arrived in Hong Kong, it was already nighttime. On the plane, after the initial excitement, Bai Ran was already sleepy. She slept for a while on the plane. Because it was first class, the privacy and soundproofing were good, so she slept peacefully. The chair could be put down, covered with a blanket, and slept especially comfortably with the air conditioner. It was not much worse than the zero-pressure bed in a 5-star hotel. So much so that Gu Qingzi could not bear to wake her up when she slept so soundly. When the plane was about to land, even though he could not bear to, he still gently woke her up. When the plane landed, it was already past 2 in the morning. Bai Ran was in a daze. She had slept for 3 to 4 hours on the plane. Moreover, her biological clock was always on time. When she got off the plane, she was a little unsteady. It seemed that the beautiful trip in her imagination was a little too tiring to just sit on a plane. Bai Ran had not traveled much and did not know that flying was so tiring. Although he had slept comfortably, he was still a little annoyed when he was woken up halfway through his sweet sleep. Gu Qingzi hugged her shoulders and coaxed her gently, "Be good. When we reach the hotel, take a shower before you sleep." "I'm afraid I won't be sleepy after the shower." At that time, she would be refreshed after taking a bath. He would be sleepy and fall asleep immediately. What should she do in the long night? But if she slept directly when they reached the hotel, then, although she and Gu Qingzi were already married, because it was a flash marriage, she still felt that they were just dating. There was no sense of a wedding ceremony at all. Just like a couple in love. But, if they were in love, they had to pay attention to their image. In the past, if she was very tired from work, she would fall asleep on the bed when she reached home. She did not have to worry about whether she showered or not. It was the same if she woke up early the next day to shower. But, in front of Gu Qingzi, she still had to pay attention to her image. This was instinctive. Gu Qingzi smiled. "If you can't sleep, I'll coax you to sleep." "What if I can't sleep after you coax me?" Then, Gu Qingzi suddenly smiled mysteriously. "Then let's do something meaningful." Bai Kun's face suddenly turned red. He suddenly realized what he meant by meaningful, and his face was burning. "What are you doing? What are you thinking?" Gu Qingze wanted to tease her and smiled playfully. What did you think of? Why is your face so red? Bai Ran felt that he had fallen into a trap. He looked at him helplessly and then lowered his head to study his phone. There's no signal on my phone. Give me the phone. Gu Qingze shrugged. Bai Yan handed the phone to him with a blank expression. What are you doing? Idiot, of course it's to change to a Hong Kong mobile phone card. Bai Ran was a little puzzled. Can't a domestic SIM card find a signal in Hong Kong? Roaming is a waste of phone bills. Bai Ran looked at Gu Qingze in surprise. Chapter 47:14. It's a little strange. Bai Ran said half jokingly, half seriously, I think you're a thrifty housewife. It's not a feeling, it's a fact. Your husband is indeed a thrifty man. After a pause, Gu Qingze continued, Is this something that surprises you? Bai Ran nodded seriously. Actually, I thought about it carefully. I still remember going to your house when I was young. I don't know if it was your birthday or something. I used to think that your family background was above average, like the middle class. When Gu Qingze first transferred to their class, Bai Ran felt that Gu Qingze should be from the middle class based on his clothes. That's because most of the children in the class came from the middle class. At that time, the kindergarten that Bai Ran and Gu Qingze attended was considered to be quite good in the capital. However, when they actually arrived at Gu Qingze's house, Bai Ran sighed. His family lived in such a luxurious and huge mansion. Although the children in kindergarten did not have the concept of class, on the way home, Bai Ran heard her mother exclaim more than once that Gu Qingze's family background was one of the best in the capital, let alone in the class or school. At that time, I always heard from my mother that your family background was very good. She told me to be careful when I was with you. Why? I don't know. Bai Ran was also confused. At that time, my mother kept talking about the Gu family in the capital. At that time, I didn't know what the adults were thinking. I only knew that you were fun to play with, so I was willing to play with you. However, I never observed your family background. But after I grew up, including now, my impression of you is that you are a young master from a wealthy family. But looking at your daily expenses, you have always been very diligent and thrifty. Most young masters spend money extravagantly. But you, in fact, your family background is one of the best in the capital, right? But I feel that you're very careful with your money. You're the kind of spend money where it's needed. Gu Qingze filled in the SIM card into her phone